The morning started like any other on New Vancouver. Sarah Chen stood in her kitchen, packing lunch for her son Marcus. The colony world's twin suns were rising over the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Marcus sat at the table, swinging his legs and chattering about the field trip his class would take to the alien marketplace. Sarah smiled at him, her heart full. 8 years old, curious about everything, afraid of nothing. He had his father's dark hair and her stubborn chin. His father had died 3 years ago in a mining accident, and since then, it had been just the two of them against the universe. "Remember to stay with your teacher," Sarah said, zipping up his backpack. "And don't wander off to look at the weird alien stuff." Marcus grinned. "I won't, Mom, I promise." She kissed his forehead and watched him run to catch the school transport. Sarah had no way of knowing that would be the last normal moment of her life. The call came 4 hours later. Sarah was in her lab, studying samples of native plant life when her communicator buzzed. It was Marcus's teacher, and the woman's voice was shaking. "Dr. Chen, there's been an incident. Marcus and 3 other children were taken. The authorities are here," but Sarah didn't hear the rest. She was already running. The marketplace was chaos when she arrived. Human security officers stood around looking helpless while tall reptilian aliens in elaborate armor directed the scene. These were Galactic Peacekeeping Force officers, and they moved with the casual authority of those who knew human law didn't apply to them. Sarah pushed through the crowd until she found Marcus's teacher, a young woman named Beth who was crying into her hands. "What happened?" Sarah demanded. "Where's my son?" Beth looked up, her eyes red. "They were Vraxians. They said the children were payment for a trade debt. They had papers, official documents from the Galactic Trade Commission. The peacekeepers say it's legal." Sarah felt the ground tilt beneath her feet. "Legal? They took children. How is that legal?" A peacekeeper stepped forward, his scaled face impassive. "Human juveniles are not classified as fully sentient under galactic law. They may be claimed as assets in legal disputes. Your colony administrator signed trade agreements that included this provision." "You're telling me," Sarah said slowly, her voice dangerously quiet, "that my son is property?" "Under current classification, yes. If you wish to dispute this, you may file an appeal with the Galactic Council. Processing time is typically 2 to 3 standard years." Sarah lunged at the alien, but human security held her back. She screamed until her throat was raw, but the peacekeepers simply watched. They had seen this before. To them, this was just another day. The next 72 hours were a nightmare. Sarah contacted every official she could reach. The colony administrator wrung his hands and talked about diplomatic channels. Earth's embassy on the nearest hub world expressed concern, but said their hands were tied. Military action would violate treaties. Economic sanctions would hurt humanity more than the Vraxians. Everyone was sorry. No one would help. On the 4th day, Sarah sat in her empty apartment and stared at Marcus's toys scattered across the floor. A part of her wanted to curl up and die. Another part, a colder and harder part, wanted blood. She was a xenobiologist, but before that she had been a military researcher. She still had security clearance. She still had access to classified databases. Sarah pulled up her old credentials and started searching. She looked for black projects, for weapons programs, for anything that might help her get Marcus back. She dug through layers of encrypted files, following references and redacted footnotes. That's when she found it. A single line in a report about off-book operations. Project Cold Harbor remains sealed pending Level 10 authorization. Recommend permanent deactivation of Subject 7. Subject 7. The designation appeared in 17 other documents. Always with warnings, always with casualty counts that seemed impossible for a single operative. Sarah kept digging. The picture that emerged terrified her. 20 years ago, Earth had faced a problem. Humanity was new to galactic society, and they were losing conflicts they should have won. Enemy commanders could read human emotions, predict human responses, exploit human psychology. Earth soldiers were brave, but they were readable, so Earth's darkest research division created something unreadable. Subject 7. Codename, Winter. The files were heavily redacted, but Sarah pieced together enough. Genetic modification, psychological conditioning, experimental procedures that were probably illegal even by wartime standards. They had created a human being with no fear response, minimal emotional affect, and a brain that processed combat scenarios like a computer running calculations. Winter had been deployed 3 times. Each mission was a complete success. Each mission also resulted in diplomatic disasters because Winter accomplished objectives without regard for collateral damage, political consequences, or the rules of engagement everyone else followed. After the 3rd mission, Earth's Security Council voted to seal Winter away. Too dangerous, too unpredictable, too inhuman. Sarah stared at the files for a long time. Then she made her decision. She sold everything. Her apartment, her research equipment, her savings, even Marcus's college fund. She bought passage to Titan, where the Black Site facility was located according to coordinates buried in the classified files. The journey took 6 days. Sarah didn't sleep. She watched videos of Marcus on her datapad and felt the cold rage in her chest grow colder. The facility was built into Titan's ice, hidden beneath layers of rock and radiation shielding. Sarah had to show her credentials to 7 different security checkpoints before they let her inside. The commander of the facility was a tired-looking man named Colonel Morrison. He listened to Sarah's story with weary eyes. "I want to hire Winter," Sarah said. "I want her to get my son back." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. "Dr. Chen, you need to understand what you're asking for. Winter isn't a person. She's a weapon. A very effective weapon, yes, but we sealed her away for good reasons." "I don't care about your reasons," Sarah said. "I care about my son." "Winter has no empathy," Morrison continued. "No moral compass. No sense of right or wrong. She completes objectives. That's all she does. If you send her after your son, she'll get him back. But she'll also kill anyone who gets in her way. She won't lose sleep over it. She won't even understand why she should." Sarah met his eyes. "Then we'll have that in common." Morrison studied her face, then slowly nodded. "All right. But I'm warning you, Doctor. Winter doesn't work for money. She doesn't work for patriotism or justice or any other human motivation. She works because solving problems is what she was made to do. If I let you talk to her, you need to give her a reason that makes sense in her terms." "I understand," Sarah said. Morrison stood and gestured for her to follow. They walked through corridors that got colder and more isolated. Finally, they reached a door with more security locks than Sarah had ever seen. "One more thing," Morrison said, his hand on the access panel. "When you meet Winter, try to remember something. She used to be human. Somewhere under all that conditioning and modification, there was a little girl who had a mother too. We just took that away from her." He opened the door. The room beyond was simple. White walls, basic furniture, no decoration. And sitting at a metal table, reading a book on quantum mechanics, was a woman in her 30s. She looked completely ordinary. Average height, brown hair, unremarkable features. She could have been anyone. Then she looked up and Sarah saw her eyes. They were hazel, almost pretty. But there was something missing in them. Something fundamental that made Sarah's hindbrain scream that this person wasn't quite right. Winter closed her book with precise movements and stood. "Dr. Sarah Chen," she said. Her voice was calm and neutral. "You wish to contract my services. State the objective." Sarah swallowed hard. "My son was taken by Vraxian slavers. I want you to get him back." Winter tilted her head slightly like a bird examining something curious. "Clarify the parameters. Retrieval only or elimination of the organization?" "I want my son back alive and unharmed," Sarah said. "What you do to the slavers, I don't care." "Acceptable," Winter said. My fee is non-standard. I require you to wear a recording device for the duration of this operation. I wish to study your emotional responses. I've been attempting to understand human attachment and parental bonding. This situation presents optimal research conditions." Sarah blinked. Of all the things she'd expected, it wasn't that. "That's all you want? Video footage? That is sufficient compensation," Winter confirmed. "Do you accept these terms?" Sarah thought of Marcus, scared and alone somewhere in the darkness of space. She thought of the officials who wouldn't help, the laws that didn't protect him, the aliens who saw her child as property. "Yes," she said. "I accept." Winter's expression didn't change, but she nodded once. "Then we have a contract. I will require detailed intelligence on the Vraxian slaver network, current shipping routes, and the colony's security footage from the abduction. Estimated timeline for retrieval is 72 hours from mission commencement." Morrison, who had been standing in the doorway, spoke up. "Winter, you understand this will cause diplomatic incidents. The Vraxians have galactic backing. Winter looked at him. That is irrelevant to mission success. The ship Winter chose was small and fast, designed for stealth rather than comfort. Sarah sat in the co-pilot seat, wearing the camera device that Winter had given her. It was barely larger than a button, attached to her collar. Winter piloted with the same precise movements she seemed to use for everything. Her hands moved across the controls without hesitation, without the small adjustments most pilots made. Every action was exactly correct the first time. "Tell me about your son," Winter said as they jumped to faster-than-light travel. Sarah was surprised by the question. "Why do you want to know?" "Context improves mission efficiency," Winter replied. "Also, I'm curious about the parent-child bond. My research suggests it is one of the strongest human emotional connections. I wish to understand it better." Sarah looked at the woman beside her. Winter's face showed no emotion, no warmth, but she had asked, and that was something. "Marcus is 8 years old," Sarah began. "He's smart, maybe too smart sometimes. He asks questions about everything. Why is the sky that color? How do alien languages work? What's at the center of a black hole?" She smiled despite herself. "He wants to be an explorer when he grows up. He wants to see everything in the galaxy." "You display positive affect when discussing him," Winter observed. Elevated heart rate, dilated pupils, increased vocal warmth. "This is love?" "Yes," Sarah said quietly. "This is love." "I don't understand it," Winter said. There was no sadness in her voice, just statement of fact. "My psychological profile shows standard parental attachment in my early development." Then the conditioning began. "Now I can recognize love in others, but I cannot feel it myself." "Do you remember your parents?" Sarah asked. Winter was silent for a moment. "I have memories from before Project Cold Harbor. A woman who sang. A man who taught me to count. But they feel like data entries, not experiences. The emotions connected to those memories were removed." "I'm sorry," Sarah said. "Don't be. I am highly functional. Emotions would reduce my operational efficiency by approximately 37%. Winter glanced at her. "But I do wonder what it feels like. That's why I study it." The conversation died and they flew in silence for a while. Sarah watched the stars streak past and tried not to think about what Marcus was going through. "Dr. Chen," Winter said eventually, "you should understand what will happen during this mission." "I will use violence." "I will likely kill people. I will do whatever is mathematically optimal to retrieve your son. If this conflicts with your moral framework..." "Tell me now," Sarah had thought about this during the journey to Titan. She'd spent 3 days wrestling with the question of what she was willing to accept to get Marcus back. "I'm a scientist," she said. "I believe in life and the value of consciousness. But they took my child. They hurt him. And nobody with power or authority is willing to stop them." She looked at Winter. "So yes, I understand. Do what you need to do." Winter nodded. "Good. Emotional conflict during operations reduces cooperative efficiency." They reached the edge of Vraxian space 12 hours later. Winter had Sarah stay on the ship while she went to make contact with the slaver network. Sarah watched through Winter's camera feed. The woman had put on different clothes, added makeup, changed her entire posture. She walked into a bar on a trading station like she belonged there. The bar was full of aliens. Reptilian Vraxians, insectoid creche, even a few humans who looked like they'd left their morals behind long ago. Winter moved through them without hesitation. She sat down next to a scarred Vraxian who was drinking something that smoked. "I'm looking to buy," she said. "Young, human, fresh acquisition. I heard you had new inventory." The Vraxian looked her over. "You got credits?" "I have whatever you need," Winter replied. Sarah watched as Winter negotiated. The woman showed no disgust, no anger, no hint that she was discussing human children like they were cargo. She was perfectly calm, perfectly cold. It was working. The Vraxian was relaxing, treating her like any other buyer. "Got a few kids from New Vancouver," the Vraxian said. "Good quality, smart, but they'll cost you." "I want to see the merchandise before I commit," Winter said. The Vraxian hesitated, then shrugged. "Fine, but you come alone and you get scanned for weapons." "Acceptable," Winter said. The Vraxian led her to a transport. Sarah watched through the camera, her heart pounding. This was it. This was the lead that would take them to Marcus. But then the feed cut out. Sarah stared at the blank screen in panic. Winter, respond." "Nothing." 6 hours passed. Sarah paced the ship, sick with worry. She'd sent Winter in and now she'd lost contact. Had it been a trap? Was Winter captured, dead? Then the airlock opened and Winter walked in. She was covered in blood. "Your son is being held at a processing facility on Kethrix 4, Winter said calmly, like she hadn't just disappeared for 6 hours. "I have obtained the access codes, security rotations, and structural schematics." Sarah stared at her. "What happened?" "The feed went dead. They scanned for recording devices. I allowed them to destroy the external camera to maintain cover. Then I extracted the necessary information from 17 members of the slaver network." "Extracted," Sarah repeated. "You mean tortured?" "I prefer the term applied pressure until cooperation was achieved," Winter said. "But yes, if you wish to use emotional language, I tortured them." She tilted her head. "Does this bother you?" Sarah looked at the blood on Winter's clothes. Some of it was still dripping. "It should bother me," she said slowly. "But all I can think is that we're one step closer to Marcus." "That's a normal psychological response," Winter observed. "When goal orientation is strong enough, humans can rationalize almost any action. It's one of your species' most useful traits." Winter stripped off her bloody clothes without any self-consciousness and put on clean ones. Then she pulled up a holographic display showing the facility on Kethrix 4. "The processing center holds approximately 200 children of various species," she explained. "They are sorted by age, capability, and species before being sold to different markets. Marcus Chen is in holding cell 17. Medical evaluation pending." "Is he hurt?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking. "Unknown. The facility keeps minimal health records until evaluation is complete." Winter zoomed in on a section of the schematic. "However, children are considered valuable merchandise. Physical damage reduces selling price. It's unlikely they've harmed him beyond necessary restraint." It was meant to be comforting, Sarah realized. In Winter's analytical way, she was trying to ease Sarah's worry. "When do we go in?" Sarah asked. "Tomorrow. The facility has minimal security during shift change at hour 23. I will enter through the waste processing system, eliminate resistance, and secure the children for extraction." "All the children?" Sarah said, surprised. Winter looked at her. "You contracted me to retrieve your son. However, it is mathematically inefficient to leave potential intelligence assets or future problems behind. If we are already conducting an assault on the facility, we might as well extract all viable targets." Sarah felt something warm in her chest. Winter didn't understand compassion, didn't feel empathy, but in her cold, logical way, she was going to save 200 children because it was the efficient thing to do. "Thank you," Sarah whispered. Winter frowned slightly. "You're thanking me for basic tactical planning?" "I'm thanking you for being more human than you think you are." Winter stared at her for a long moment. "I don't understand, but your bio readings show gratitude and positive regard. I will note this response for my research." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in her bunk and stared at the ceiling, thinking about what would happen tomorrow. Winter was going into a facility full of armed guards to rescue Marcus and 200 other children. The woman had no fear. No doubt, she would simply do what needed to be done. Sarah wondered what it would be like to be Winter. To face the universe without the weight of fear or love or any of the emotions that made life both beautiful and terrible. Morning came. Winter prepared her equipment with meticulous care. Weapons, hacking tools, medical supplies, everything organized and checked. "Dr. Chen," she said as they approached Kethrix 4, "I estimate a 73% chance of successful mission completion with 0 casualties among the target children. However, there is a 16% chance I will need to make difficult decisions about acceptable losses." "What kind of decisions?" Sarah asked. "If I must choose between securing Marcus Chen and securing other children, which should I prioritize?" Sarah felt her stomach twist. "All of them. You save all of them." "That may not be possible," Winter said. "If forced to choose, you find a way to save them all," Sarah said firmly. "I won't trade other people's children for mine." Winter considered this. "That choice may result in increased mission difficulty and personal risk to myself. I don't care. Promise me." Winter looked at her with those empty hazel eyes. For a moment, Sarah thought she might refuse. Then Winter nodded once, acknowledged. "I will prioritize total child extraction over ease of mission completion. This is suboptimal from a strict tactical standpoint, but I understand it is important to you." "It's important because it's right," Sarah said. "I don't understand right," Winter replied. "But I understand keeping contracts. You are my client. I will honor your wishes." The ship entered orbit around Kethrix 4. Winter dropped through the darkness like a falling star. The processing facility sprawled below her, lit up against the barren surface of Kethrix 4. Sarah watched through the camera feed as Winter's suit calculated trajectory. Wind resistance, optimal landing zone. The woman hit the ground without even bending her knees, the suit's systems absorbing the impact. She moved immediately toward the waste processing entrance, a small maintenance hatch on the facility's eastern side. Entering structure, Winter said calmly. Beginning infiltration phase. Sarah's hands gripped the armrests of her chair. She wanted to say something, to wish Winter luck, but the woman had already disappeared into the dark tunnel. The waste processing system was exactly as disgusting as it sounded. Winter crawled through pipes filled with refuse from a dozen different species, her camera showing glimpses of things Sarah didn't want to identify. But Winter never hesitated, never showed discomfort. She just kept moving forward. She emerged in a filtration room, sealed the hatch behind her, and began cleaning her suit with quick, efficient movements. Then she pulled out a small device and plugged it into a wall panel. Accessing security network, Winter said, bypassing firewalls, locating surveillance feeds. Numbers scrolled across Sarah's screen as Winter worked. Within 90 seconds, she had complete access to the facility's systems. 214 children currently in holding, Winter reported. Marcus Chen is in cell 17 as expected. 37 guards on duty, shift change in 14 minutes. Beginning elimination sequence. Sarah watched as Winter pulled out a weapon. It was strange-looking, compact, and quiet. Winter checked it with practiced movements, then opened the door to the main facility. The first guard died without ever knowing Winter was there. One moment he was walking his patrol route, the next he was on the ground. Winter had moved so fast Sarah barely saw it happen. First hostile eliminated, Winter said in the same tone someone might use to report they'd finished filing paperwork. Continuing, what followed was systematic and terrifying. Winter moved through the facility like death itself, silent and unstoppable. She knew exactly where every guard would be because she'd studied the security patterns. She knew exactly how to kill them quickly and quietly, because that was what she'd been designed to do. Sarah had thought she was prepared to watch this. She was wrong. Winter didn't hesitate, didn't show mercy. A guard turned a corner and Winter was there, and then he wasn't a threat anymore. Another guard heard something and called out, and Winter eliminated him before he could raise the alarm. Dr. Chen, Winter said as she dragged a body out of sight. Your heart rate is elevated. Are you experiencing distress? I'm watching you kill people, Sarah managed. They are slavers who trade in children, Winter said. Does their death disturb you? Sarah thought about Marcus, locked in a cell somewhere in this facility. She thought about the 200 other children these people had stolen. No, she said finally. Keep going. Winter reached the holding area after eliminating 17 guards. The cells were small, barely large enough for a child to lie down. Through the camera, Sarah could see small faces pressed against the transparent walls, frightened and hopeful. Winter's hands moved across a control panel. Opening cells, the doors hissed open. Children stumbled out, representing dozens of different species. Some were crying. Some were too scared to move. Winter turned to face them. I am here to extract you from this facility. Follow my instructions exactly and you will survive. A small Andrelian boy, his fur matted and dirty, spoke up in a wavering voice. Are you here to hurt us? Winter tilted her head. No, I am here to return you to your families. That is my current objective. Where's my mom? A human girl asked. She couldn't have been more than 6. Unknown, Winter said. But you will be returned to human authorities who will locate her. Then she saw him. Marcus. He was huddled in the corner of cell 17, his face tear-streaked and terrified. He looked smaller than Sarah remembered, more fragile. Marcus Chen, Winter said, walking toward him. Your mother hired me to retrieve you. You are safe now. Marcus looked up at her with wide eyes. My mom's here. She is monitoring this extraction from orbit, Winter said. She pointed at the camera on her suit. You may speak to her. Mom? Marcus's voice cracked. Mom, I'm scared. I want to go home. Sarah was crying now, openly sobbing as she stared at her son's face on the screen. Baby, I'm here. I'm right here. Winter's going to bring you home. I promise. Winter reached down and picked Marcus up with surprising gentleness. We need to move. The alarm will sound soon. She turned to the other children. Form a line. Stay close. Do not make noise. If you cannot keep pace, alert me immediately. The children, understanding that this strange cold woman was their only chance, obeyed. Winter led them through the facility, still carrying Marcus. She moved more slowly now, adjusting her pace for the youngest children. When a small creche girl stumbled, Winter stopped and helped her up without a word. They were halfway to the extraction point when the alarm finally sounded. Alert status confirmed, Winter said calmly. Hostiles converging on our position. Accelerating timeline. Guards poured into the corridor ahead. Winter counted 12 of them, heavily armed, and she was carrying Marcus with 200 children behind her. Sarah saw Winter's eyes calculate angles, trajectories, probabilities. Then she made her decision. Children, close your eyes and cover your ears, Winter said. Then she set Marcus down and stepped in front of him. Dr. Chen, you may wish to look away. Sarah didn't look away. She watched as Winter became something else. The woman moved with impossible speed and precision. She killed 3 guards before they even understood what was happening. Her weapon made quiet coughing sounds and guards fell. When one got close enough to grab her, she broke his arm with a movement so fast Sarah almost missed it, then used his weapon to eliminate 2 more. It was over in 11 seconds. 12 guards lay dead or dying, and Winter hadn't taken a single hit. She picked up Marcus again. Continue moving, but Marcus was staring at her with new fear in his eyes. You killed them. Yes, Winter confirmed. They were preventing me from completing my objective. Elimination was necessary. Are you going to kill us too? A small voice asked from behind them. Winter looked back at the children. No, you are the objective. I do not harm my objectives unless mission parameters specifically require it, which they do not in this case. That's not comforting, Marcus whispered. I apologize, Winter said. Comfort is not one of my capabilities, but I can promise you safety. That is mathematically demonstrable. They moved through the facility, Winter eliminating any guard who got in their way. More children were crying now, traumatized by the violence even though it was protecting them, Winter noticed. Dr. Chen, the children are experiencing distress. Should I be doing something about that? Sarah was amazed that Winter was even asking. Talk to them. Tell them it's going to be okay. But I don't know if it will be okay, Winter said. Current mission success probability is only 68%. Lie to them, Winter. Give them hope. Winter was quiet for a moment, processing this instruction. Then she spoke to the children. You will see your families again. This is a difficult experience, but it will end. I will ensure your safety. It wasn't warm. It wasn't particularly comforting. But it was something, and some of the children seemed to calm down slightly. They reached the extraction point, a cargo bay with a large door to the outside. Winter set Marcus down and moved to the controls. Dr. Chen, bring the ship to the following coordinates, she said, rattling off numbers. Prepare for rapid extraction. Sarah was already moving, bringing the ship down toward the facility. On the screen, she could see Winter herding the children toward the door. That's when everything went wrong. A massive Vraxian, bigger than any Sarah had seen before, stepped into the cargo bay. He wore elaborate armor marked with the symbols of a clan leader, and he carried a weapon that crackled with energy. The human weapon, he growled. We were warned you might come. Winter pushed the children behind her. Step aside. I have no quarrel with you specifically. You killed 43 of my clan, the Vraxian snarled. You have destroyed my operation. I will take your head back to the cartel. Your operation involves child trafficking, Winter said. The cartel will likely thank me for eliminating you. Now step aside or I will add you to the casualty count. The Vraxian laughed and raised his weapon. You're one human. I am Warlord Krax, undefeated in 200 battles. Winter's response was flat and emotionless. Then this will be battle 201. What followed was brutal. Krax was fast for his size and his armor absorbed the first shots Winter fired. He swung his weapon like a club, forcing Winter to dodge. Behind her, the children screamed. Sarah watched in horror as the Vraxian landed a hit, sending Winter crashing into a wall. The woman stood back up immediately, but Sarah could see blood on her face. Mission success probability dropping, Winter said calmly. Now at 42%, Krax charged again. This time Winter didn't try to shoot him. Instead, she slid under his swing and drove her weapon into the weak point where his armor joined at the knee. The Vraxian roared and fell. Winter was on him instantly, finding every weak point in his armor with methodical precision. The ship was crowded and noisy with 200 frightened children. Winter had set the autopilot for the nearest human colony, while she methodically treated her wounds. Sarah sat with Marcus, unable to let go of him even for a moment. "Mom," Marcus said quietly, "those men who took us, they said terrible things. They said we weren't people, that we were just things to be sold." Sarah held him tighter. "They were wrong. You are a person. You matter." "But the peacekeepers agreed with them," Marcus continued, his voice breaking. "The law said we weren't important." "How can the law say that?" Sarah didn't have a good answer. How could she explain to her 8-year-old son that the galaxy they lived in valued profit over children? Winter, who had been listening while bandaging a cut on her arm, spoke up. "The law is written by those in power to benefit those in power. This is a mathematical constant across civilizations. Your value as a sentient being is not determined by legislation." Marcus looked at her. "But if the law says we don't matter, who's going to protect us?" Winter met his eyes. "Your mother protected you. She refused to accept the law's determination of your value. That is a very human response." "You protected us too," Marcus said softly. "I was contracted to do so. It was not personal." Winter paused, then added, "Although I am beginning to understand that for humans, protection of offspring is always personal." Over the next few hours, Winter moved through the ship checking on the children. She was awkward with them, unsure how to provide comfort. But she tried. Sarah watched as Winter explained to a crying child that tears were a normal psychological response to trauma. She saw Winter carefully clean a wound on a small boy's arm, while reciting the exact probability of infection. It was clinical and strange, but it was care. In her own way, Winter was caring. Then Winter discovered something that changed everything. She was going through data recovered from the facility's computers when she stopped, her expression shifting slightly. For Winter, any change in expression was significant. "Dr. Chen," she said, "you need to see this." Sarah walked over, leaving Marcus with some of the older children. Winter displayed a file on the screen, heavily encrypted but now open. "This is a communication between Warlord Krax and his superior in the Vraxian cartel," Winter explained. "It was sent 3 days before the abduction on New Vancouver." Sarah read the message. Her blood ran cold. The kidnapping had been planned. Specifically planned. The Vraxian cartel had targeted New Vancouver because it was a small colony with minimal defenses. They had been told to take human children specifically to test Earth's response, but the cartel wasn't acting alone. The order had come from higher up, from the hierarchy itself, the alliance of old, powerful species that dominated galactic politics. "They were testing us," Sarah whispered. "Marcus and the others, they were just a test." Winter nodded. The hierarchy wanted to measure human response time, political will, and military capability. "They took your children to see what you would do. This was a scientific experiment in species evaluation." Sarah felt rage burning in her chest. "There are more messages." "Let me see them." Winter pulled up file after file. The picture became clearer and more horrible. Over the past 5 years, the hierarchy had been systematically kidnapping humans. Thousands of them, taken from small colonies and remote outposts. The Galactic Peacekeeping Force had been ordered to ignore it. It was preparation. The hierarchy was gathering data before launching a formal campaign to subjugate humanity. They had anticipated various responses. Military action, which would be limited by Earth's treaties. Economic sanctions, which would hurt humans more than anyone else. Diplomatic protests, which could be ignored. What they hadn't anticipated was winter. "They made a mistake," Sarah said slowly. "They thought we would play by their rules. All projections in these files assume humans will behave like other species," Winter confirmed. "They did not account for humans who are willing to operate outside galactic norms." Winter pulled up another file. "There's more. The hierarchy has agents monitoring for unusual responses. By now they know about me. They know I eliminated an entire Vraxian operation in 72 hours. They will be analyzing this data." "Good," Sarah said, her voice cold. "Let them analyze. Let them see what happens when they take our children." Winter looked at her with interest. "You want me to continue operations?" "There are thousands of humans still out there," Sarah said. Thousands of children like Marcus who were taken. The government won't save them. The law won't protect them. But you can. I am one operative, Winter said. The Vraxian cartel spans dozens of systems. The hierarchy controls hundreds of worlds. The odds of mission success are statistically unfavorable. You got Marcus back, Sarah said. You saved 213 children. We can save more. Winter was quiet for a long moment, calculating. Dr. Chen, if I continue this campaign, it will have consequences. The hierarchy will send forces to eliminate me. They will target anyone associated with me. You and Marcus will be in danger. Then we go public, Sarah said. We tell everyone what happened. We show them the files. Earth's government will not support this, Winter warned. They will demand I stand down to preserve diplomatic relations. Sarah looked at her son, asleep now with other children around him. She thought about all the other parents out there who were living her nightmare, who had no hope because the law said their children didn't matter. Then we don't ask for permission, Sarah said. Winter, you were made to be a weapon. But you can choose what you fight for. Fight for the children. Fight for the families. Winter considered this. I was designed to follow orders. But my creator sealed me away. I am technically no longer under anyone's command. She looked at Sarah. If I do this, it will mean war. Not declared war, but war nonetheless. The hierarchy will not tolerate this challenge to their authority. Good, Sarah said again. Let there be war. Let them know that humans protect their own. Winter nodded slowly. Very well. I accept this new contract. However, I will need resources. Intelligence networks, safe houses, support infrastructure. I'll get them, Sarah promised. I still have contacts from my military research days. And I'm guessing there are a lot of angry parents out there who will help once they know someone is fighting back. Over the next week, as they traveled back to human space, Sarah began building a network. She contacted other families who had lost children to the slavers. She reached out to retired military officers who were disgusted by their government's inaction. She talked to journalists who wanted the truth told. The response was overwhelming. Within days, Sarah had pledges of support from hundreds of people. Money, equipment, information, safe houses. A movement was forming built on rage and desperation and hope. Winter watched this with fascination. You are creating an insurgency, she observed. An underground network designed to operate outside legal frameworks. This is typically a decades-long process. You are accomplishing it in days. Humans are good at coming together when we're angry, Sarah said. Winter tilted her head. I am learning that anger is a powerful motivational force, more powerful than I had calculated. Marcus, who had been staying close to his mother, spoke up. Winter, why do you talk like that? Like everything is math? Because to me it is, Winter replied. I do not feel emotions the way you do. I observe them, calculate their effects, and factor them into my decisions. It is how I was designed. Does it make you sad? Marcus asked. Not feeling things? Winter thought about this. I don't feel sadness, so I cannot miss it. However, I am beginning to understand that I am missing something important. When I watch your mother's dedication to you, or when I see the families reuniting with the children we rescued, I can calculate the value of those bonds, but I cannot experience them directly. That sounds lonely, Marcus said. Winter looked at him with surprise. Loneliness is an emotional state I was designed not to experience. And yet when you said that, my cognitive systems registered something similar to recognition. Perhaps you are correct. Sarah watched the exchange with wonder. Winter was changing. Slowly, carefully, but definitely changing. Exposure to human emotion was affecting her in ways her creators probably never intended. They arrived at a human colony world called Freedom Station. The name was ironic now, but it had been chosen during humanity's early optimistic years in space. Sarah's network had arranged a meeting with sympathetic journalists and political figures. She was going to tell the truth about what happened to Marcus, about the hierarchy's plans, about everything. Winter accompanied her to the meeting, still wearing her simple, unremarkable clothes. But everyone in the room knew who she was. Word had spread about the woman who destroyed a slaver operation in one night. Sarah stood before the cameras and told her story. She showed the files Winter had recovered. She displayed evidence of thousands of kidnappings, all sanctioned or ignored by the hierarchy. Then she said the words that would change everything. My son was taken because the law said he didn't matter. Because the galactic community decided human children could be treated as property. I couldn't get help from my government. I couldn't get justice through legal channels. So I found someone who could bring my son home. She gestured to Winter. This woman who our own government locked away because she was too effective, too dangerous. The response came faster than anyone expected. 3 days after Sarah's broadcast, ships started disappearing. They were slaver vessels mostly, but also transport ships that carried kidnapped humans. One by one they went dark. No distress calls. No survivors. Just silence. Winter was hunting. She had left Sarah and Marcus at a safe house on Freedom Station, protected by security teams from Sarah's growing network. Then she had taken her ship and gone to war. Sarah watched the reports come in. Every day brought news of another slaver operation destroyed, another group of children freed. Winter moved through Vraxian space like a ghost, impossible to track, impossible to stop. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions. The Vraxian cartel put a bounty on Winter's head that was so large it made the news across hundreds of worlds. The hierarchy sent their best operatives to hunt her. They all failed. Winter had no patterns to predict because she had no emotions to exploit. She didn't get angry or scared or overconfident. She simply calculated the optimal approach for each mission and executed it perfectly. After 3 weeks, the Vraxian cartel was in ruins. Their leadership was dead or in hiding. Their operations were shattered, and Winter kept going. She started targeting other slaver networks, the Kresh Syndicate, the Tellurian Collective. Any organization that had taken human captives found themselves facing Earth's coldest killer. The hierarchy realized they had a serious problem. Sarah was in a meeting with other parents from her network when the news broke. The hierarchy had issued an official statement demanding Winter's immediate surrender. They accused Earth of sponsoring terrorism and threatened economic sanctions. Earth's government responded by saying Winter was not acting under their authority, and they had no control over her actions, which was technically true, but everyone knew it was a cowardly dodge. The hierarchy wasn't satisfied. They sent a military task force to hunt Winter down. That was their second mistake. Sarah watched the footage later, recovered from the task force's own ship cameras. 20 elite hierarchy commandos, equipped with the best weapons and armor in the galaxy, had tracked Winter to a moon in neutral space. They had expected a battle. What they got was a massacre. Winter had known they were coming. She had prepared the battlefield, calculated every angle, anticipated every tactic. The commandos never had a chance. When it was over, Winter stood alone among the bodies and spoke directly to the cameras she knew were recording. "I am Winter," she said in her calm, emotionless voice. "I was created by humanity to solve problems that could not be solved through conventional means. You have created a problem by taking human children. I am solving it. If you wish me to stop, the solution is simple. Return all human captives and reform your laws to recognize human sentience. Until then, I will continue operating." The message was broadcast across the galaxy, and something shifted. Other species started to take notice, not the big powerful ones, but the small ones. The ones who had also lost children to slavers but had no power to fight back. They saw Winter and they saw hope. Messages started flooding into Sarah's network. Aliens begging for help, offering information about slaver operations, volunteering to assist in any way they could. Sarah found herself leading a coalition that crossed species boundaries. Parents who had lost children, regardless of what they looked like or where they came from, united by grief and determination. Winter received the information and continued her campaign. But something was changing in her too. She came back to Freedom Station after 2 months of operations. Sarah barely recognized her. Winter had always been neat and precise, but now she looked tired. Not physically tired, but something deeper. "I need to speak with you," Winter said. "Something has changed in my cognitive processing." They sat in a quiet room while Marcus played with other children nearby. Winter looked at Sarah with those hazel eyes that had once seemed so empty. "I have been documenting my emotional responses," Winter said, "or rather what I believe might be emotional responses. When I free children from captivity, my systems register something similar to satisfaction. When I eliminate slavers, I experience what might be classified as righteous anger. When I see families reunited, I observe in myself a state that resembles happiness. You're healing, Sarah said softly. They tried to take your emotions away, but they're coming back. Winter shook her head. That's not possible. The conditioning was permanent. The modifications were genetic. I cannot feel the way you do. Then what are you feeling? Sarah asked. Winter was quiet for a long time. I don't know, but it's different from my baseline state, and it's growing stronger with each mission. She looked at Sarah. Is this what it means to care? To have a purpose beyond simple objective completion? I think so, Sarah said. I think you're becoming more human. I'm not sure I want to be human, Winter admitted. Emotions complicate calculations. They introduce variables that reduce efficiency. But they also give meaning, Sarah said. Isn't that worth something? Winter considered this. I have been running probability models on my own behavior. The optimal solution would be to complete this campaign as quickly as possible, eliminating all slaver networks through overwhelming force, but I find myself choosing methods that preserve more lives, that give enslaved individuals time to escape, that minimize trauma to rescued children. These choices reduce efficiency by 12 to 15%. You're choosing compassion over efficiency, Sarah said. Is that good? Winter asked. From a tactical standpoint, it is suboptimal. From a human standpoint, it's beautiful. Winter looked confused. I don't understand beauty either, Sarah smiled. You will. Give it time. But time was something they were running out of. The hierarchy, frustrated by Winter's success, made their final play. They announced a summit. They would meet with human representatives to discuss reforms to galactic law, but only if Winter surrendered herself for trial. Earth's government jumped at the opportunity. They ordered Sarah's network to shut down. They demanded Winter present herself for extradition. Sarah knew it was a trap. The hierarchy would never let Winter survive a trial. They would execute her and use it as a warning to anyone else who dared challenge their authority. She tried to convince Winter to refuse, but Winter surprised her. I will attend, Winter said, but I will set the terms. The summit was held on a neutral station in deep space. Delegates from hundreds of species gathered to watch. Earth's government sent ambassadors. The hierarchy sent their prime director, the most powerful individual in galactic politics. Winter walked in alone, wearing her simple clothes, carrying no weapons. Every security scanner in the station was pointed at her. The prime director was a massive being, representing a species that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. He looked at Winter with contempt. You stand accused of terrorism, mass murder, and violation of galactic sovereignty, he said. How do you plead? Winter looked at him without fear or respect. I acknowledge that I have killed slavers and destroyed their operations. I do not acknowledge these as crimes. You have destabilized entire sectors, the Prime Director said. You have violated diplomatic immunity. You have ignored galactic law. Galactic law is unjust, Winter replied. It permits the enslavement of sentient children. It classifies human juveniles as property. Such laws deserve no respect. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species supported the hierarchy. Others quietly supported Winter. The Prime Director raised a hand for silence. You are one individual. You cannot change the laws of an entire galaxy. Winter's response was calm and devastating. I have already changed them. Every slaver network in this sector has collapsed. Every species that profited from human captivity has lost billions in assets, and I am not finished. I will continue until the laws change or until I am destroyed. She pulled out a data chip and displayed it for all to see. This contains evidence of hierarchy involvement in illegal slaving operations. 10,000 human children taken over 5 years, all with hierarchy knowledge or approval. You did not simply ignore the problem. You created it. This was a test, an experiment to measure human response before launching a subjugation campaign. The evidence played on screens throughout the chamber. Delegates saw the messages, the orders, the calculated cruelty of it all. Some species representatives stood and walked out. Others demanded explanations. The chamber descended into chaos. The Prime Director's expression turned cold. You have made a grave mistake, human. We will destroy you. We will destroy your species for this insult. Winter looked at him, and for the first time Sarah saw something like emotion in her eyes. It was contempt. You can try, Winter said. But you need to understand something about humans. We are not like other species. We do not operate by your social rules. We do not fear your authority. When you threatened our children, you awakened something in us that you cannot control. She gestured to the screen still showing the evidence. I am what happens when humanity stops being nice. I am what happens when you push us too far. And there are more like me being created right now because you taught us we need them. That is a declaration of war, the Prime Director said. Winter shook her head. No, this is a negotiation. Change your laws. Recognize all sentient juveniles as protected beings. Return all human captives. Do this and I cease operations.